love that. Yeah.
All right, it's going now. It says
You're on?
live, but I don't think it's going live because I didn't hit anywhere to stream to, so it shouldn't be going live.
Did I check?
We'll figure it out. Yes, it says just recording, so it says record only. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So this would be on Jacob's channel. Sorry, or yours.
No, we can. I think it's just recording it to his.
Okay.
Basically his StreamYard account, and then I'll go download it off of there. It kind of records to a cloud because it said he has like 50 hours of recording time. So I texted him and asked him if it was okay, and he didn't respond. So I just went ahead and did it. But he told me before it was fine. He's always said it's fine to use the StreamYard, and I don't because I'm still not used to it yet. So
we have StreamYard. I've got access to StreamYard for Girl Country too. We guess we could use that actually.
Okay.
If the need arises.
Yeah. So right now, I mean, as far as I know, it's just recording to the cloud. Then I'll download it, and then I can send you the file if you want it as well, or we can put it wherever.
I don't know where. I don't know what to do with the file.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll throw it on my channel, sure. So.
I'm a technological loser.
I feel it. I feel that.
So am I. That's why we have Jacob's background right now, which we all like, but I don't know how to change it.
We do like it.
Should we do an introduction? Okay, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to our Phantastes book club. We love this book so much that we thought we would share it with everyone that we know.
Word.
Here we are. Okay, I'm going to start with chapter 1.
Okay.
A spirit. The undulating and silent well and rippling rivulet and evening gloom, now deepening the dark shades for speech assuming, held commune with him as if he and it were all that was. Shelley's Alastor. I awoke one morning with the usual perplexity of mind which accompanies the return of consciousness. As I lay and looked through the eastern window of my room, a faint streak of peach color dividing a cloud that just rose above the low swell of the horizon announced the approach of the sun. As my thoughts, which a deep and apparently dreamless sleep had dissolved, began again to assume crystalline forms, the strange events of the foregoing night presented themselves anew to my wondering consciousness. The day before had been my 21st birthday. Among other ceremonies, as I'm reading this, sorry, I'm interrupting my own self, but as I'm reading this, I'm thinking of C.S. Lewis's critique that George was a great fairy tale. What do you call it? Inventor. Like he actually wrote real fairy tales, but he wasn't a good writer. So this was Lewis's critique on George. And you know what? I've had a hard time seeing that personally.
Me too. It doesn't bother me at all, his writing.
No, not at all. Okay. The day before had been my 21st birthday. Among other ceremonies investing me with my legal rights, the keys of an old secretary in which my father had kept his private papers had been delivered up to me. As soon as I was left alone, I ordered lights in the chamber where the secretary stood. And the secretary is not a person. The secretary is a piece of furniture. Okay, just for those listening. The first lights that had been there for many a year, for since my father's death, the room had been left undisturbed. But as if the darkness had been too long an inmate to be easily expelled, and had dyed with blackness the walls to which, bat-like, it had clung, these tapers served but ill to light up the gloomy hangings, and seemed to throw yet darker shadows into the hollows of the deep wrought cornice. All the further portions of the room lay shrouded in a mystery whose deepest folds were gathered around the dark oak cabinet, which I now approached with a strange mingling of reverence and curiosity. Perhaps like a geologist, I was about to turn up to the light some of the buried strata of the human world, with its fossil remains charred by passion and petrified by tears. Perhaps I was to learn how my father, whose personal history was unknown to me, had woven his web of story, how he had found the world and how the world had left him. Perhaps I was to find only the records of lands and moneys, how gotten and how secured, coming down from strange men through troublous, troublous, never heard of
You got it.
troublous times to me, who knew little or nothing of them at all. To solve my speculations and to dispel the awe which was fast gathering around me as if the dead were drawing near, I approached the secretary, and having found the key that fitted the upper portion, I opened it with some difficulty, drew near it a heavy high-backed chair, and sat down before a multitude of little drawers and slides and pigeonholes. But the door of a little cupboard in the center especially attracted my interest, as if there lay the secret of this long-hidden world. Its key I found. One of the rusty hinges cracked and broke as I opened the door. It revealed a number of small pigeonholes. These, however, being but shallow compared with the depth of those around the little cupboard. The outer ones reaching to the back of the desk, I concluded there must be some accessible space behind, and found, indeed, they were formed in a separate framework, which admitted of the whole being pulled out in one piece. Behind, I found a sort of flexible portcullis of small bars of wood laid close together horizontally. After long search and trying many ways to move it, I discovered at last a scarcely projecting point of steel on one side. I pressed this repeatedly and hard with the point of an old tool that was lying near, till at length it yielded inwards, and the little slide flying up suddenly disclosed a chamber, empty, except that in one corner lay a little heap of withered rose leaves, whose long-lived scent had long since departed, and in another a small packet of papers tied with a bit of ribbon, whose color had gone with the rose scent. Almost fearing to touch them, they witnessed so mutely to the law of oblivion, I leaned back in my chair and regarded them for a moment, when suddenly there stood on the threshold of the little chamber, as though she had just emerged from its depth, a tiny woman form, as perfect in shape as if she had been a small Greek statuette roused to life and motion. Her dress was of a kind that could never grow old-fashioned, because it was simply natural. A robe plaited in a band around the neck and confined by a belt about the waist descended to her feet. It was only afterwards, however, that I took notice of her dress, although my surprise was by no means of so overpowering a degree as such an apparition might naturally be expected to excite. Seeing, however, as I suppose, some astonishment in my countenance, she came forward within a yard of me, and said in a voice that strangely recalled a sensation of twilight, and reedy river banks, and a low wind, even in this deathly room, "Anodos, you never saw such a little creature before, did you?" "No," said I, "and indeed, I hardly believe I do now." "Ah, that is the way with you men. You believe nothing the first time, and it is foolish enough to let mere repetition convince you of what you consider in itself unbelievable. I'm not going to argue with you, however, but to grant you a wish." Here I could not help interrupting her with the foolish speech, of which, however, I had no cause to repent. "How can such a very little creature as you grant or refuse anything? Is that all the philosophy you have gained in 21 years?" said she. "Form is much, but size is nothing. It is a mere matter of relation. I suppose your 6-foot lordship does not feel altogether insignificant, though to others you do look small beside your old Uncle Ralph, who rises above you a great half-foot at least. But size is of so little consequence with old me, that I may as well accommodate myself to your foolish prejudices." And so saying, she leapt from the desk upon the floor, where she stood, a tall, gracious lady, with pale face and large blue eyes. Her dark hair flowed behind, wavy but uncurled, down to her waist, and against it her form stood clear in its robe of white. "Now," said she, "you will believe me." Overcome with the presence of a beauty which I could now perceive, and drawn towards her by an attraction irresistible as incomprehensible, I suppose I stretched out my arms towards her, for she drew back a step or two and said, "Foolish boy, if you could touch me, I should hurt you. Besides, I was 237 years old last Midsummer Eve, and a man must not fall in love with his grandmother, you know. But you are not my grandmother, said I. How do you know that? She retorted. I dare say you know something of your great-grandfathers, a good deal further back than that. But you know very little about your great-grandmothers on either side. Now, to the point. Your little sister was reading a fairy tale to you last night. She was. When she had finished, she said, as she closed the book, Is there a fairy country, brother? And you replied with a sigh, I suppose there is, if one could find the way into it. I did, but I meant something quite different from what you seem to think. Never mind what I seem to think. You shall find the way into fairyland tomorrow. Now look in my eyes. Eagerly I did so. They filled me with an unknown longing. I remembered somehow that my mother died when I was a baby. I looked deeper and deeper till they spread around me like seas, and I sank in their waters. I forgot all the rest till I found myself at the window, whose gloomy curtains were withdrawn, and where I stood gazing on a whole heaven of stars, small and sparkling in the moonlight. Below lay a sea still as death and hoary in the moon, sweeping into bays and around capes and islands, away, away, I knew not whither. Alas, it was no sea, but a low bog burnished by the moon. Surely there is a sea somewhere, said I to myself. A low, sweet voice beside me replied, In fairyland, Anodos. I turned but saw no one. I closed the secretary and went to my own room and to bed. All this I recalled as I lay with half-closed eyes. I was soon to find the truth of the lady's promise, that this day I should discover the road into fairyland. All right.
He's a good writer. My goodness.
I know, right?
He is.
Yeah. First chapter, just every time I read it, it just pulls me in.
I know.
Just like it's such a perfect way to introduce a story.
You want to know my favorite word that
What?
he uses?
Yeah.
Well, it's 2 words, but flexible porculus.
What does that mean?
Well, it's in the context of him like reaching his hand into the secretariat into the little hole and like he's like feeling with his fingers back in there.
Right, I'm trying to find it here.
Behind, I found a sort of flexible porculus of small bars of wood laid close together horizontally. After a long search and trying in many ways to move it, I discovered at last a scarcely projecting point of steel on one side. So he's like describing what he's feeling on his fingertips, even though he can't see it, you know?
Yeah. Well, we actually have a secretary. It's not as old as the one he's talking about, but it's interesting because I think it was very common for them all to have, ours has it too, in the center. So like you open, it's one of those things that you open it and you know, it comes down as a desk in front of you. And then it's got all these drawers and everything, right? And in the center, it has a bigger drawer. And when in our secretary, when you pull that drawer out, there's a board in the bottom that has a wedge shape, so you can tip it at the back, and then there's a secret drawer underneath, right? So I think it was pretty common that the secretary always had somewhere it had a secret chamber in it. And of course, George milks it for all it's worth.
Yeah.
Right? Because the hinges it hasn't been open for so long that the hinge breaks when he opens it, right? Because it's all rusted and, eaten away by time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, what I find the most interesting about this chapter is the conversation he has with the woman, you know, and I've been so like, I don't know about your books, but in the beginning of my book, there's a long poem by Novalis in German. Do you have it in yours at the very beginning?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
It's
I
like
could
one
try.
page before that.
Yeah.
I think.
And so what I wanted to say before, not anything about what's written there, but Novalis was a sophiologist. Like he had a, I don't know exactly which one of, or if it's just contained, because I'm not as familiar with Novalis as I'd like to be, but I do know that he had a Sophia character in his works. And George MacDonald translated Hymns of the Night by Novalis. He was a huge Novalis fan. Okay. So when I was reading this again, I realized that this is Sophia, because what's interesting about Sophia, I don't know about if it comes out in Novalis's work, but in Solovyev's work on Sophia, he sees her too, and she has what he calls azure eyes, so like this deep blue, right? And so does this woman. She has these deep blue eyes, and so I'm just going to say he's talking to Sophia, right? He's talking to the divine feminine, and it's interesting because she says you might know something about your grandfathers, but you don't know anything about your grandmothers, right? So she makes it, and she's a woman, right? So, but anyway, do you guys have any thoughts about that conversation that they're having here? Because it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jason.
What? Go ahead, Luke. Were you going to say something?
Yeah. I guess because and this kind of is attached to what you're saying already, Sherry, about Sophia. But I see Sophia, or at least in my own experience, as there's almost like okay, I'll describe it in this way. Like the first sentence, like I woke up this morning with the usual perplexity of mind that accompanies the returning of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
That sentence is so accurate to like my experience of like existence, or like the existential sort of like pursuit of meaning, and the questions that immediately I'm greeted when in a conscious state, like with these questions.
In the morning when you wake up, or just in general?
Just in general, but I'm kind of saying it more as like I don't think this would be necessarily particular to myself, but just kind of like the existential weight of existence, or the gravity of waking consciousness, and what Sophia does, in my opinion, is breaks through all of that somehow, or entices me to break through that somehow, because that it is even later. I mean, like two sentences later, he's talking about like what does he say? As my thoughts, which a deep and apparently dreamless sleep had dissolved, began again to assume crystalline form. Like his thoughts are these like rigid, hard, like they become unadaptable, or there's no room, there's no ambiguity, and I guess what I can say in my own experience of the Sophianic or Sophia would be, even within waking consciousness, that ambiguity begins to reveal itself again, if that makes sense.
The ambiguity. Okay, interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. When you say the ambiguity, what does that mean? What does that mean to you?
It means man, that's going to be a hard question to answer, but it's that it's that which is unconscious, or remains tacit, that which is on the edge of articulation,
Mm-hmm.
and is immediately lost once it is articulated. And
So,
like,
so then, like, so this idea of his thoughts, like when I like he uses the word dissolved there, right? As my thoughts, which a deep and apparently dreamless sleep had dissolved, right? So, I get this picture of like the original Star Trek, because I never watched the new ones, but where they beam themselves to places, right? And they dissolve, right? And then they and then they reform on a planet somewhere where they're going, where wherever they tipped in their coordinates. And so this is kind of how I like his dreamless sleep just dissolves all of that, right? And so it's all like in these little tiny particles, and as he wakes up, it comes together, like that crystals do that, right? Like when the crystals grow, and so as he comes up, from sleep into consciousness, his thoughts reform, right? So I guess what I'm asking is, like, so this ambiguity, is that the dissolution of all that crystalline form? Is that what you're thinking about? Or is it just more of a nuanced approach?
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that, actually.
It's fine. It's fine. You don't have to. I'm just curious. I'm always curious, Luke. I don't want to put you on the spot.
No,
To me, it's kind of like a vague definition where it would kind of, you could almost say it's kind of like almost like seeing someone at night or something. So you kind of have you're quite sure who they are, but you're kind of sure or something, or seeing like a shadow or something, or seeing the back of someone, maybe. Like it's kind of ambiguous. That to me, that's what it kind of means, but I don't know if that's quite right. Where
Because I'm
it
just
is kind of like you're talking about. It is kind of not. It's not clearly defined. Like you're talking about, it is a bit dissolved. It doesn't quite have a crystalline shape that you can clearly define. To me, that's kind of what it is, but I don't know.
Because the it that we're talking about is Sophia, right?
The
it.
the lady. Oh, the it.
Well, I mean, for Luke, right? This it that we're talking about. If I have it right, like maybe I have it wrong.
Yeah, I think you're correct.
Okay.
And I guess, yeah, what I'm trying to communicate is that there's this strange irony where, like, coming into waking consciousness, though everything everything does come back into this, like, crystallized vision. Like, all your sensibilities are awakened to a reality that's completely different from the one that you were just experiencing in a dream state, even though he does say here in a dreamless sleep, apparently dreamless sleep. But we don't always remember our dreams, even when they occur.
Right.
So I guess what I was trying to get at is, there's this strange irony that exists when, upon waking, even though everything's becoming real, there's a way in which it's accompanied with all these questions, because it doesn't, what you were just experiencing beforehand, even though it wasn't crystallized, it was more you were in your dream state. But that seemed more real than waking consciousness does, in a certain way. Or you could almost feel more at home in the dream world than you can in
Okay. Now I think I'm understanding what you're saying.
yeah, even though
Yeah.
the dream world contains this like ambiguity and vagueness that the real world doesn't. The real world's providing you with the concrete, the material.
But it's perplexing.
But it's like, how am I supposed to understand this?
Right.
It doesn't even feel like I belong here. It feels like I belong in that dream world. You know?
What comes to my mind is, and I have this experience every morning. I wake up, my body wakes me up, and I have like an air purifier in my room that runs right in the background, and it's usually dark when I wake up. But I wake up, my eyes are still closed, but I'm coming to the I can feel myself coming up to the surface, and slowly I'll hear that. So, but I'm awake before I hear it, right? So it's like, oh, the hearing is coming online, right? If you want to put it that way. And then, you know, the rest of your senses, everything comes online, right? I think that's a good way to put it. And so you do feel like you're coming up to the surface of something, out, you know, from the depths of something. Like there's that feeling of coming up, like, because you're in this world of complete silence. But that silence is also a lack of sensory input, right? And the sensory input, this is me just thinking out loud, you guys. The sensory input raises questions like, what's that? And where's that coming from? And why do I have, you know, and is it light yet? And so, you know, as you come up into this sensory experience, you are perplexed, right? You have to locate. You have to, what time is it? You know, like you're, all that stuff is happening, right? And so, and I think that the dreamless sleep part is, it's that often described feeling that people have in near-death experiences of just complete peace, right? Because you don't have any of the sensory input. And this is like George MacDonald, he switches out death and sleep all the time in his stories, right? Death and sleep are the same thing, because sleeping is a death, right? Actually, like you go involuntarily in a way, right, down into some dark, like, yeah. So, and I think that's the way most ancients thought of it too. Like sleep was a kind of a death, right? And waking up was a kind of a resurrection, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder I wonder if there can be almost two sides to like waking up and having like a perplex, like he says, like, he uses both words to describe his waking consciousness of perplexity and wonder. So it's not just this, and I maybe I'm associating perplexity with like too much of a negative connotation, you know, like I don't often enjoy being perplexed. I want, you know,
well, so yeah, I think that's right. It's slightly confused, right?
Yeah. So like a disorientation.
Yep.
But then so there's wonder immediately too. It's not, I think that you're met with wonder. So.
You guys remind me when we were driving back from Wisconsin, my mom was asleep. I was driving and my mom was asleep in the passenger seat, and we had the GPS on, so she's telling us where to go the whole trip. She's talking and my mom's just sleeping through it. And out of nowhere, my mom she says like, turn left up here, and my mom just wakes up and like just yells it and it repeats. I was like, yeah. It was like she was just coming up like you're talking about into this perplexity of like, she said she was horrified, she didn't know what was going on. I was like, so yeah, it's really disorienting sometimes. You wake up and like you're talking about hearing that humming that's been going all night, and it's like you're just hearing it for the first time now, and you're like, wait, what is going on? You're having to gather everything back into crystalline forms or something, so you can make sense of the world.
Or if you've ever slept in a hotel room, right, and you close the curtains and the damn things won't go all the way, like, you know.
yeah.
And there's this tiny little crack, you know, and in the morning this light, you know, just like it.
Yeah.
And it's the whole room's pitch except for this little slice, right?
Yeah.
Between this damn curtain that won't close properly, and it wakes you up. You know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. Out of that death, right? Like you're just like we say that we're dead to the world, right? Just completely out of it. And then the sun comes up and this little slice of light cuts into your room and you're just like, ding.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Yeah. Just a little tip for travelers: bring clothespins. Clothespins.
Always have them in your travel bag.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting parts to me was the dialogue as well. But there were some other parts before that really stood out to me that I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on. Maybe before we go back into the dialogue. And
sure.
The one was he says a statement: "I was about to turn up to the light some of the burned strata of the human world with its fossil remain charred by passion and petrified by tears."
I know, I love that. I was going to read that too.
Yeah. What do you guys think of that? Charred by passion and petrified by tears.
Well, he's talking about this room, right, that has just been dark for so long. I don't know how long. I can't remember how long his father has been dead. Well, probably not that long. Well, no, maybe longer, because he doesn't get his inheritance till he's 21. So, yeah, his father could have been dead longer. I don't remember how that went.
Yeah, but
I just think it's a really great description. Charred by passion.
Because with passion, there's kind of like a burning, you know, and people burn with passion and stuff. But it's such a strange way to describe fossil remains or something.
Does anyone know how petrification happens? Because tears are salty, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because as you have like, it kind of almost made me think of, because when you dig up fossil remains, it's kind of previous world you're encountering, and I was almost thinking of something apocalyptic. I don't know why, because you have like in the Bible you have the flood, which is the waters, and I guess that could be tears, salty waters, whatever, and then in, you know, in like I think in the one of the epistles of Peter, it says the heavens are reserved with fire for like a later time. So there's like kind of two apocalyptic visions, and one's of fire and one's of water. And so I didn't know if he was, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he was planning on that, but I don't know. George MacDonald does all sorts of things.
I wonder if you like just get little bits of like, you get bits of his like theology, like just in here. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not like he's writing theology or whatever, but like that when I read Charred by Passion, I think about that, like his Justice and Mercy sermon. You know, those being like the you know, those things being synonymous, or you know, the relentless fire of God's love. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Petrified by
It,
tears, though.
it kind of almost reminds me of the song later in the book where he says, "Alas, how easily things go wrong. A sigh too much or a kiss too long." Like you can have too much sadness where it's overwhelmed in tears, or too much
Passion.
kiss too long. Like the passion is too much. Too.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was and then the law of oblivion part stood out to me. The part where he says the rose. He's talking about the rose petals and the little ribbon that's like.
Oh yeah.
He says, whose long-lived scent had long since departed, and in another small packet of bird tied with a bit of ribbon whose color had gone with the rose scent. Almost fearing to touch them, they witnessed so mutely to the law of oblivion. That is, I don't even know. Just the fact that he would mention those words, the law of oblivion. I'm like, I've never heard of this law before. Could you say more? Like he just drops it in there. And I'm like, okay, this is gonna have to ponder over this one for a while.
Well, would it be like equivalent to the law of entropy? Like, the thing just over time is just becomes brittle and fragile and falls apart.
I'm tempted to look up the word oblivion because I don't know the definition off the top of my head, but I know it has something to do with being forgotten.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, oblivion, usually to obliviate something is like to completely remove it from existence.
Yeah. Meaning there's no memory of it anymore,
Right.
So, like that's even when we have this idea of like what we leave when we die is our legacy. There's this memory that lives on of who we are, and oblivion would remove even that.
So like the rose scent had gone, the color had gone, and I actually wrote a song like this. Now that I come to think of it, that's bizarre.
The folk song.
I should get it. I'm gonna.
Folk song. You got it. You got a banjo? Let's hear it.
Yeah, Jason, you get your banjo. Jerry, drink some honey and come back and sing to us.
Okay, sorry for all the noise. I'm not singing it. Okay, like forget that.
But I like how you know where things are. This is pretty handy. I would be like, I can't find this. I know I wrote this somewhere.
I have nothing but time on my hands. I know where everything is. Okay, wait. Let's see. No, this kind of stuff, my songs and my poetry, I always know where it is, Jason. I would die if I didn't know where it was. Seriously, I would.
Have you published any of it in the book?
No, I have not. I was working on it with you, remember?
Yeah, some of it, yeah.
We're going to see if we can make it happen. Okay, I just wanted to read this. Ribbons of romance weaving their way, pressing on. Sunshine and rain, the years, and the color is gone. And then don't lose your grasp. The color was not meant to last, but the ribbon's still there in your hair. And we'll take the blue of childhood mixed with the green of wildwood, and we'll take the yellow of golden afternoons. And then it repeats because it's a song, right? And and we'll take the yellow of those memories past, so the color stays fast. It just reminded me of this song when I went,
Yeah,
because he mentions the ribbon and the color and the scent.
Yeah.
What's interesting is I'm wondering if this is in both situations, the natural dye. I'm thinking of those ribbons being naturally dyed. You talked about the color being color fast, and what's interesting too is like how the ribbons had a rose scent. So oftentimes like that, the essence of the flower is, and not essence in like I'm using it in the weird, in a maybe a more colloquial sense of like the
Oh, the scent.
yeah, the smell of it is entrapped in the color, which is so interesting because like it's such a different way of and potentially, if I can use the word, like holistic way of dyeing something, because you really do, like if you're around somebody that does natural dyeing or something like my wife does, it's like it fills our house with the aromas, so it's whatever she's dyeing with, it's like everywhere, and sure enough it's on the fabric, or it's on the fiber that's so
Yeah.
it's infused.
Yeah.
You know what I thought it was really beautiful how you guys were talking about oblivion being forgotten. I don't know, it's just
and they were forgotten, right?
Yeah, and it's incredibly hopeful to me that like this thing, these memories, whatever this was in his father's secretary, had sat there for so long and like untouched that you might fear it may never be discovered again. And then he finds it, and it's like almost in this weird hopeless state. It doesn't have color, it doesn't have scent, but then still from it this beautiful woman form like almost emerges from. I mean, I don't know if she comes from that, but it's right after that he gets this vision of her.
Well, I mean, the fairies and the flowers are very tightly connected in the story, right?
Yeah.
So it's as if she came from the flower. And what's really interesting was she overheard him the night before. So as withered and colorless and scentless as the rose is, she's actively listening in on his conversations and remembers everything. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you're right to associate her with Sophia. I don't know if he's potentially playing on this here, but my mind, because he mentions Greek statuette, makes me think of Athena a little bit. And she's like the goddess of wisdom in the Greek stories, and she's like eternally a virgin, things like that. I mean, she's also a warrior, and here in his story, she's more she doesn't appear as a warrior or anything, but
well, she's tough though.
She's also beautiful in a timeless way. Like that sentence where it's just a few more sentences down where he says her dress was a kind that could never grow old fashioned.
Yeah.
It's like there's this a way in which she always is alluring, like no matter like even her sense of style, what she's going to, style might be a weird word, but like the choice of garment that she wears is going to attract you, or it's going to be the object of desire.
Yeah, this is beauty, right? Like this is what beauty does. And I love the way he describes her voice, it recalls a sensation of twilight and reedy riverbanks and a low wind. It's very seductive, actually.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. You can put yourself right there.
Yeah.
Even in this deathly room.
You feel it in there.
Like, and it's warm because all those sounds are warm sounds too, right? So I think that's why he added even in this deathly room, because a deathly room would be cold and give you the chills and yeah. Yeah.
I know it's one of those things you gotta sit with for a moment and just pause. Think about.
I had that line underlined for sure.
I love what she says when she says, "You haven't never seen such a little creature before," and he says, "No, and I hardly believe I do now." And then she says, "Well, that's the way with you men. You believe nothing the first time, and it's foolish enough to let mere repetition convince you of what you consider in itself unbelievable." Like You know, we could go over and over and over this, and you still, you know, if you think it's unbelievable, you're just not going to believe it, right? It's not going to happen.
Yeah. No matter how many times like nature presents the pattern, it's like you just don't.
Yeah, and she says, you know,
Still
I'm not going to argue with you about it. What do you want? I'll give you a wish. It's interesting how for him it's really hopeless to, you know, talk about trying to make somebody believe something that they just don't believe. Right? That seems to be what he's saying.
Yeah, I forgot the part where she even said grant you a wish. That's funny. Because he doesn't actually, I mean, I'm sure he wishes for something. He doesn't directly wish for anything. But
he does. He does at the end of it, of the conversation.
Well,
because she reminds him of his wish.
Oh yeah. Okay.
He had a wish that that she overheard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Form is much, but size is nothing. It is a mere matter of relation. I like that line too. That the form is what.
I'm trying to. I keep on thinking. I'm stuck on the word repetition, because what is it? What is it that repetition? Why is repetition so important? Is it like so we see something repeat again and again and again, and that continues to concretize like that. We can come to expect it. I mean, I'm saying something that's really obvious.
Yeah.
It sort of also it fixates your belief, you know, in a way that makes it sort of like incapable of it makes you conclude too soon as to what to expect. And so instead of like, I mean, you could see this in like I guess I'm thinking of like the way in which people are in a constant state of becoming, or the world is in a constant state of becoming, and so often we limit it to this like fixed thing, like, oh, you'll never change, I can come to expect this from you. And so
yeah, I think it's interesting because she says you never believe anything the first time. Okay. And people who believe things the first time they hear them or see them we usually call them gullible, right? And that would be me. I don't know if you heard. I don't know if you heard my jackalope story, but yeah,
I did. That was amazing. But I'm so glad you told it, because
like, oh my god, look at that.
But after you told that story, I was thinking about it. I was like, how come I never believed? Like, why wouldn't you? Like, I would think you'd see it and you just be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's a rabbit and a deer, and then, you know, I don't know. It doesn't seem absurd, and they look real.
Yeah, I mean, platypuses are things. So
yeah, right.
You never know, right? Like this is me. I'm like, I'm open. Like if there's a jackalope out there, I want to see one.
Yeah, but don't you also? I'm thinking of like, I want to believe. I want.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the world is wonderful, right?
Yeah.
Like so, it's like, oh, you're kidding. How come I live in Ontario. I've lived in Ontario my whole life. Now I'm in Manitoba, and there's jackalopes here. How come I never heard of that?
Yeah,
just like one province over.
What is the field called? It's called cryptozoology. So like Bigfoot, Mothman,
right.
All these different. Yeah. Oh my goodness! Like I was obsessed with those. Like I had books and books, and it was all like that was what from the age of like 5th grade or right around there.
My niece is married to a guy from like he's First Nations, and they live. His band lives in this. Anyways, it's just that away kind of thing, not far. but it's a totally different landscape. Like it's very dry and it's incredibly beautiful. It's like super Wild West looking. And like gulches and all this stuff. And those people have nothing but Bigfoot stories. Like they have Bigfoot stories that go way back. They have a story of, and I'm not even sure if I should tell it because I'll just tell you a little bit of it, but where like his great grandmother as a child, she found this cave and there was a bunch of little kids and they were all playing around and they found the cave together and they threw a rock down and the rock came up and was floating in the air. Right. And, yeah, and anyway, he told me so many stories about these Bigfoot creatures, and
that's fascinating.
Who knows? Maybe, you never know, right?
I'm a believer. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Bigfoot.
and the way that he tells the stories, I can't tell if he's pulling my leg or if he's really serious, and so I just go with it. I'm like, wow.
Yes.
I'm all in.
Surely there's a Bigfoot somewhere. Fairyland.
Willful suspension of disbelief.
Loch Ness, all that stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
that's a mouse song too.
Well, you know what? I think that 3 people who love Phantastes would all agree that these things exist, right?
Yeah.
You'd all be like, of course. Loch Ness? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Easy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. The world is enchanted, my friends.
Yeah. I like how she says that other line to him. Is that all the philosophy you have gained in 20 years? I was just like, ouch, man.
I've got LOL written in the margin.
What do you think she means by form is much, but size is nothing?
Ooh.
I'm thinking of the imagination essay, just to give you a hint.
Wait, can you say more about that? I read that essay, but
I have it almost memorized. Okay, let me see here.
That's a long essay. That's a hard one to read.
I have been mining this essay for at least 4 years now. So
I have not even finished it. I gotta confess.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can find the word forms, which comes forward a lot in this essay. We have 21 places in this essay where the word forms is used. So, let me see here.
Scale. That's what I'm thinking of. Sorry.
Scale?
I'm thinking of how. Okay. How I should just not say what's on my mind, but what's on my mind is scale in regards to like it doesn't. Oftentimes we have these ambitions that are so large, and then we can't even attain them or something like that. And so even though the form of whatever's informing the vision of or the ambition to whatever it's not like that's not necessarily the corrupt part. The corrupt part is the size in which we are trying to achieve it. I'm thinking of E.F. Schumacher's Small is Beautiful. I'm thinking of the sort of like downsizing, less is more type thing, and how in tighter margins, greater limitations, sometimes that actually allows for creativity to flourish, contrary to you get these like
Yeah, that's the beauty of constraint, right?
Yeah.
Kind of idea. Yeah. When I read it first, what I thought of, I thought of this essay, and I'm going to read a little thing out of here, but when it came to the size thing, I thought of status and hierarchy. Because it's stature, right? Like, so that the large thing kind of, the small thing, the large thing, right? So we have this upward movement, and you know, if it's large, we have to crane our necks, right? Like the elephant or the giraffe or the, you know. So I don't know if that's a good place to go with it, but I'm just going to read this really quickly here. He says, so he talks a lot about forms, and let me see, where should I start? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm just going to read. I can't just take a little excerpt. I have to read to give it context. If we now consider the so-called creative faculty in man, we shall find that in no primary sense is this faculty creative. Only George could do it. Indeed, a man is rather being thought than thinking. When a new thought arises in his mind, he knew it not till he found it there, and therefore he could not even have sent for it. He did not create it, else how could it be the surprise that it was when it arose? He may indeed, in rare instances, foresee that something is coming and make ready the place for its birth, but that is the utmost relation of consciousness and will he can bear. Consciousness and will he can bear to the dawning idea. Leaving this aside, however, and turning to the embodiment or revelation of thought, we shall find that a man no more creates the forms by which he would reveal his thoughts. Then he creates those thoughts themselves. For what are the forms by means of which a man may reveal his thoughts? Are they not those of nature? But although he is created in the closest sympathy with these forms, yet even these forms are not born in his mind. What springs there is the perception that this or that form is already an expression of this or that phase of thought or of feeling. For the world around him is an outward figuration of the condition of his mind, an inexhaustible storehouse of forms, whence he may choose exponents, the crystal pitchers that shall protect his thought and not need to be broken, that the light might break forth. The meanings are in those forms already, else they could be no garment of unveiling. So, what he wrote in that, for what are the forms by means of which a man may reveal his thoughts? Are they not those of nature? This is like saving the appearances in a nutshell, from Barfield. And I actually think that's what Barfield is expanding on, right here. So essentially, and he goes on to talk about it further down. He says, but although the human imagination has no choice but to make use of the forms already prepared for it, its operation is the same as that of the divine, inasmuch as it does put thought into form. So what are the forms? Nature, to George MacDonald. Those are the forms. And those forms already contain the meaning that you need with which to clothe your own thoughts, right? Which he goes on to say further down. Let me see if I can. Whoops.
Stuff he writes, it's just like, it's like oh man, it's intense.
So he says here, for the world is, allow us the homely figure, the human being turned inside out. All that moves in the mind is symbolized in nature. Or to use another more philosophical and certainly not less poetic figure, the world is a sensuous analysis of humanity, and hence an inexhaustible wardrobe. for the clothing of human thought. So then you go back to this sentence in Phantastes, this tiny little sentence.
He also used that word in there. I noticed when you were reading, he used the word crystal or something in there too. And we were talking about the crystalline forms when he's coming out of the crystalline pattern. So, yeah. I think these are all connected, these ideas.
Oh, yeah. Like, yeah.
All right, so break that down for us. Give us the 2-year-old English there.
So we go, where is that when she talks about her size?
Form is much, but size is nothing. It is a mere matter of
form is much. Okay. Mm-hmm. Because it's the forms that already contain the meaning with which you clothe your own thoughts. Okay. And he uses the example. He says, take any word expressive of emotion. Take the word emotion itself, and you will find that its primary meaning is of the outer world, in the swaying of the woods, in the unrest of the wavy plain. The imagination saw the picture of a well-known condition of the human mind, and hence the word emotion, right? So, our language is built from what we see in the world. And I mean, we said crystalline. We said crystalline. Why did we say crystalline? Right? Because it already exists.
Yeah.
Like, it's always true. This is always true. I haven't lived long enough to prove it, but the length of time that I've known about this and thought about it, it's always true. It's always been true for me. That we use the already existing forms in order to communicate what's going on in here. So it's the macrocosm and the microcosm, right? And this is Sophia. This is exactly the function of Sophia, of Sophia, right? It's nature. I'm not going to do it justice because I really am not smart enough for it, but it's the wisdom that is found in the forms, right? And now what's coming to my mind actually is Tomberg's statement in the last Meditations on the Tarot that the body is a miracle of wisdom, right? It's also a form. Like, it is, right? So,
as is this woman's body that he's viewing there too, her form.
Yeah, so it's the form that matters, right? Because the form contains the meaning.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how tall or big it is.
Yeah.
Right? Like, she's tiny. It's tiny, but
it means the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked what you said. You said form contains the meaning with which we clothe our thought, or something like that.
Yeah,
that's I think what you said. And then when you put it that way, it became a communion in my mind or something. It's like this weird, it's a communion with.
Yeah, and that is the whole purpose of creation, right? Sophia is to get, like remember what I read at the beginning there, where he said, if we consider the so-called creative faculty in man, we shall find that in no primary sense is this faculty creative. Indeed, a man is rather being thought than thinking. Wow. Like, if you know this imagination essay and you read George MacDonald's Imaginary Works, you will see the essay come to life. Because what he does is he uses all the forms, right, to contain the meaning. Mm-hmm. That's why he's a master fairy tale writer. That is precisely why.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm 100% tracking, and I just want to ask this question to see if I'm on board with like, so at what I'm trying to figure out if we're still understanding forms as abstractions, or if we're understanding forms as concrete material, particular like objects or something like that. So like in my mind, size is something that's spatial and temporal. It can be measured. There's that sort of reality to it. And maybe I'm using the wrong words, like reality, or we experience it that way, or whatever. I don't.
Right.
Phenomenologically, uh, through our sensory perceptions, that's how we gain access to the size of something. However, the form of something is more abstract. The form of something needs not any manifestation of its spatial temporal reality, even though it does. It needs all of them. But that's there's like this collective, and maybe I'm getting too like Platonic in my understanding of what a form is.
Yeah, I think you are actually. I don't think he's talking about it in terms of like Platonic forms.
Yeah.
They're
Okay.
not they're not misleading in that sense, right? Like they're not abstracted. They're actual. Like so like he as far as I can understand it anyways. I could be wrong, but you know, like he says, take the word emotion, for example. This is his example, right? That you see the wavy plane, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you use that form, right? Of the wind moving across the grass and the grass waving, you know, to describe what's happening inside you. And you call it emotion, right? So he must know the etymology of the word because something about it is derived from that. And so
I mean, we do that with the ocean too, in a lot of ways. Like the turmoil of a sea. You use that same form to describe when you're
and I mean, if you like, you could also say to get away from the word form, you could use the word image or representation, is what Barfield uses, right? He uses the word representation.
Okay.
And one way to think about it, I think, Luke, is the way we dream. So we don't dream in propositions. Okay. We don't get a text in the middle of the night. Okay. We get images.
Mm-hmm.
And those images represent what's happening inside of us. That they're all.
This reminds me of the.
You know, like here's a dream. Here's a dream I had for years. I had a dream that I lived in a moldy, rickety cabin, right? That was kind of slanted to one side. And I was standing on the porch, and it was early spring, and there was a river out in front, and there was a wooden bridge on the river, and the river was raging because the waters were high, and the bridge looked like it was going to give way, and a grizzly bear was coming across the bridge towards me. I had that dream for years.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those things, right? The bear, the bridge, the moldy smell, the high waters, like that's all describing what's going on inside of me, right?
Yeah.
And so if you think about it in those terms, that's what George is talking about. And we so this is why he says we're not really creative, because we don't invent something new to describe what's happening inside of us. We take what's already existing and we use it to describe what's happening in front of us. So the forms, the representations, contain the meaning, right? So you could think of them as a vessel, right? Full of meaning. water, right? The water is the equals the meaning, right?
Yeah. That
Some
reminds me a little bit, and I could be wrong in guessing this. I usually am whenever I try to bring a Luke Thompson idea into something. He's like, no, it's not like that at all. But it reminds me of when he talks about iconic thinking. So
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's saving the appearances, right? Like it's representations, forms, images, iconography, iconicity, right? Seeing the world iconically, right? So you look, like, here's an example of, we talked about this one time, with, on the Boxer, of, you can look at a tree and you can see boards. You can cut the tree down and turn it into boards. You can look at the tree and you can see firewood, right? You can look at the tree and you can see shelter. You can look at the tree and you can see something praising God. You can look at the tree and you can see what it means to be deeply rooted, right, in your tradition and reaching towards the heavens, so to me, iconic thinking is to see the tree symbolically. And I think that I personally think that's why the tree exists, to give us that information so that we can express that meaning into our lives, right? And if you're just a materialist consumer, well, then it's just boards and firewood, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure
out the. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no. I'm trying to figure out how this relates also to so like I have a different set of language that I bring to this thing. So like for instance, when Luke Thompson talks about iconic thinking, I always like supplement my understanding of like life in the poetic mode.
Yep.
And my understanding of my understanding of how the intuition functions. And like, I guess for me, divine wisdom is this thing that I truly believe is intuited through sensory emotional experience. So like, how do we understand something like hospitality? Well, you can also bring in all the Vervaeke terminology too, and then talk about something like participatory knowing. But like, it truly is this sensory emotional experience where like you are suddenly hit with the intuition of what hospitality is in the moment of actually experiencing that in spatial temporal reality. It's the music, it's the people you're around, it's all these different images that are coming together in now you have this like experience that is informing you of something that truly is not tangible. It's not within one of those things. You can't atomize it and pull it all apart. It's only in this like holistic sort of understanding or mosaic vision or something, so
well, everything, how do I want to say this? Like when you're talking about that, I get that same understanding of hospitality, for example, when I'm taking a walk in the woods and I see something, a color that, stands out to me under an old fir tree. And I walk over there and there's a red orchid and it's coming out of club moss and lichen, and they're all growing on a dead piece of fir, right?
Yeah.
And it's sitting on pine needles that are like 5 inches thick. And then there's old man's beard hanging there, and there's a spring just 5 feet away. That orchid would never be there if all of those things weren't there. Okay? The orchid needs all of that to exist in that place in order for it to bloom. That's hospitality.
Yeah.
To me. Right? That's when I look at that, I see hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
It all has to come together. And it's a miracle. Because when you think about what the orchid needs to bloom and that it's all there, right? It's a miracle, right? So yeah, so that it's the same thing that you're seeing, Luke, when you take stock of what's actually going on around you, right? This moment is it's not just comprised of people walking through a door and entering your home and then walking out and leaving your home, right? You could do that and nothing, and it wouldn't be hospitable, right? It needs everything, that needs the entire ecosystem in order for hospitality to emerge out of that experience, right? Like the orchid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This whole talk kind of reminds me, and this could be a little bit off base here, but it reminds me of the Golden Key story as well. And I actually brought that up, and you, Sherry, sent me the imagination essay when I said, so I think I asked, what is this Golden Key? And you were like, here you go. And I was like, well, there it is. But there's this part in it where there's this lady, and she tells them, like, when you come to this place, and she says, I forget what it's called, but she's like, just keep walking on and on. And so there's this part in the story, and they come, and it's just kind of like this plane that they're walking through, and they just see all the shadows and all these forms like dancing before them, and the shadows are kind of in the air and all this stuff, and they just want to get to the land from where the shadows come. And they're talking like, we just want to get to the land from where the shadows come. And it's like the forms, like all the forms they're seeing, they can cast big shadows or little shadows. Like the size isn't really what matters. Like it's the form, and they see these forms that are like informing their thoughts, and it's like they're I don't know, all this stuff is coming together, and they're just like, we just want to get to the place where the shadows come. Is where what makes the form so grand isn't really, it's not its size, because its reflection or its shadow or whatever can be big or small or whatever, but that's not what makes it
what it
so
is
special.
What it is.
What it actually is.
Okay, so I have a story. I have a really funny story. I was up at the barn once. It was in summertime, and I think it was like a full moon, and so it was really bright. And I was doing chores late, and it was dark, and all of a sudden my dog went running up. There's like a little hill that goes up, not far, like maybe, I don't know, 50 feet away, and was just ferociously barking, like. And I knew that there was something there, right? And I looked, and I saw this huge shadow because it was a full moon, right? And it was barreling like straight towards me, and the dog was just barking at it. And I freaked out, and I ran in the barn, and we've got like a Dutch door on the barn, and the thing creaked open, and it was a skunk.
Oh my goodness. What happened to the dog? Did it get away?
No, he knows not to get close enough.
Okay, good.
And that's why he wasn't attacking it, And I thought it was a bear, because all I could see was this giant shadow coming towards me, right? Because just the way the moon was shining.
I love
and
that.
the skunk was casting this huge shadow.
That is
Those
the best.
skunks.
I was so
I'm
glad it
after you,
wasn't a
too.
bear.
Yeah.
But it was really funny. I laughed at it, like it was comical to me, like that moment, right?
Yeah.
Terrified of this little tiny creature. So let's try to finish this dialogue here, because
it's really good.
Maybe we won't. Maybe we won't linger too long. But is there anything else, guys?
I've got, yeah, I felt like this last little bit of the chapter there was a lot there that I
tons.
a lot written down, but we don't have to go too deep into that.
The part where he tries to touch her was one part that stood out to me, because that just seems to be like a theme in fairy stories. I guess I've seen that come up before. Where, I mean, I think he tries to do that later in the story as well. And she says, "Do not touch me. Why would you touch me?" But,
well, if you touch me, I should hurt you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that response is a little.
Well, I don't think she would deliberately hurt him. I think just touching her would hurt him. Right?
My dog's up here moaning. I don't know if
I can hear.
Is she okay?
She's like nursing on a blanket. Like, this is something she's been doing like this winter for whatever reason. She just has a blanket in her mouth. She's just chewing and I don't know, whining.
Huh.
I don't know. I think she's okay.
The grandmother's part stood out to me a lot too. I think that actually helped me understand a while back. It was actually that part in Phantastes that kind of helped me understand the symbolism of like head coverings, which I could just never get anymore. That part in the Bible where it talk about head coverings and just and how it's the feminine is veiled and she covers her head because she covers her identity and stuff. And so it's the same with marriage. Like in your genealogy, the woman usually takes the husband's name, and so there's this mystery that always remains with your genealogy. So she's like, "How do you know you're not my grandmother? I could be your grandmother." And I don't know. I just really love that it's a way that everything's connected through the feminine, because you don't know, because everything's connected through like a weird mystery of genealogy. Because you'd be like, "No, I can track my genealogy. See, we're not related." And she's like, "Well, how do you know? Do you know your grandmothers?" No, you don't have that written down.
Right.
So I don't know. I thought that part was really interesting to me.
Yeah. And his little sister was reading him the fairy tale.
Yeah.
He wasn't reading it to her. She was.
that.
And then he says she was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a fairy country?
Is there? Yeah. I suppose there is, if one could find a way into it. So he just is. What occurs after that sentence? Yeah, I honestly, when he goes straight into looking into
her eyes,
yeah, and that I have written in big letters, baptism, on the side of the.
Oh, interesting.
On the side of the page, because it was like, that was the first thing that came to mind as I was reading it. I was like, I looked deeper and deeper as he's looking into her eyes until they spread around me like seas, and I sank into their waters.
Wow.
You know, it's funny that you use the term baptism, because C.S. Lewis says that Phantastes baptized his imagination.
Yeah, I can see how
there you go.
Yeah.
And there, I just want to grab. I'm going to see here. Hang on a second.
Also,
really good.
So yeah, he sinks into the waters. I'm just going to read that.
Yeah.
I looked deeper and deeper till they spread around me like seas, and I sank into their waters. I forgot all the rest till I found myself at the window, whose gloomy curtains were withdrawn, and where I stood gazing on a whole heaven of stars, small and sparkling in the moonlight. Below lay a sea, still as death and hoary in the moon, sweeping into bays and around capes and islands, away and away I knew not whither. Alas, it was no sea, but a low fog burnished by the moon. But like,
it's all like waters. This, everything is waters.
It's waters. The
and waters like, above, waters below, the fog, the moon is waters. It's just
but it's also
baptism.
Like the moonlight and like distance, and it's like like what's there and what's not there and what's actually there, and is it a mirage, and is it like
Yeah.
not, you know? And man,
Yeah. I love how, yeah, surely there must be a sea somewhere. In a low, sweet voice beside me replied, in fairyland.
yeah. And he was like,
Yeah.
just prior to that, he responded to his little sister, like, I suppose there could be, you know, a way into fairyland. And it's like, then later, then just that right then, he's like, surely there must be this sea somewhere. Like, even though it just disappeared before my eyes,
Yeah.
there has to, like, this isn't just a tease. It's got to be somewhere. I've got to find my way. I got to find my way.
Yeah.
Like, now he's like convinced, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I wanted to read you a couple of Solovyev's. Just want to see if I can find a couple good ones here. Oh no, this is not. This is from. Okay, here, this one. This is from a poem. My Empress has a lofty palace. It's a poem of Sophia, and he writes, and bathed in light she bends down over him like youthful spring over somber winter, and full of quiet tenderness covers him with her radiant veil, and the dark powers are stricken to the ground. His whole being burns with a pure flame, and with eternal love in her azure eyes, she softly tells her beloved. I just wanted to draw the what do you call it? The similarities between the description of Solovyev's Sophia and the way that George MacDonald talks about it here with the eyes, right? Because he does mention that she has blue eyes. I can't remember where that is now. And then he falls into them, basically, like into a sea, right? Into a deep sea. And Soloviev talks about Sophia in the same way. So it's really interesting. I find that interesting.
Yeah, it is.
What's the significance of the blue?
I don't know.
Probably waters, maybe.
Well, yes. There's also, Nate's mentioned it, and I don't really know much more about it, but I think the Virgin Mary is often depicted in blue as well.
Wow.
But I don't know more than that. So
that really, you know, that like plateware and stuff that you see at antique stores, that's like got that super, super dark, like blue. I don't know if you see it on fine china. Sometimes you see it in doll eyes, and they're like super.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like there's something. It's probably associated to a dream that I had that was reoccurring ever since I was a little kid, where I was like trapped in a room with all these dolls that had these like super.
That's terrifying.
It was so terrifying, but it also is like uncanny in a way. Like, I don't know, but like, yeah, I don't know why I'm bringing that up, but every time I go into an antique store and I see one of these plates, I'm like, that's the blue from the dream, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So, anyways, that's my.
Well, Soloviev talks about it as azure, and I'm just gonna see.
Wonder if we can
azure.
Pull up our color palette.
Yeah, what does that look like? I got a computing business here. Color. Oh, look at this.
Oh my gosh. There's
Is that
1,000
it?
shades of it.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at too. It looks like there's a bunch of them.
So it's blue. It says blue. It
I
says
think that's what blue is in Spanish. Or
it's
something.
typically a
Ah,
shade of blue, so it's safe to assume that they're blue eyes. There's no definitive answer to this question, as people with azure eyes can have any color of eyes. Any color of blue, I think. So, yeah, blue.
Is this
I like
some
blue.
Atlantis thing or something like that?
No,
Good.
I don't think
No,
so.
no.
The ancient lost city of Atlantis. I'm not gonna. Whenever Rudolf Steiner goes down some of those rabbit holes,
I know.
what's going on?
He talks about it as if he's been there.
I know exactly.
Yeah, the Virgin Mary is veiled in blue, wearing a blue robe. Theotokos is also wearing blue. So yeah,
Wow.
I don't know. We could work on figuring out more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a
You sure?
so in the well, we don't have to now, but in the Green Knight movie, there's this one part where he's talking to the
Nate probably already knows.
It's not the king. It's not the king. Yeah, it's not the king character. It's the character he meets later on. The woman's there, and it's like the friend. It's the guy, the woman's husband. But the husband says something, and he says like, "This encounter with this hue or this color that you've had, or something like that." It's this weird phrase he said, and it's just the whole color is just green, and she's just like, "Why green?" And she gives this monologue on green, and it's like there's this I don't know. I feel like you could do that with blue too. You could just spend a lifetime on just that color and encounter all the good and the bad and just everything it symbolizes and entails. And because with green, it's kind of the same way. She goes through this monologue of like, well, it's the color of life. It's a new life of grass and things like that. But it's also the color of mold and of death and things like that. So blue.
And frogs and toads.
Yeah. Blue is kind of the same way, I guess. I often think of waters of and the heavens. I don't know why I think of heavens as well. I think because, but
Yes,
I think of Joni Mitchell's song "Blue." You guys know it?
No.
You should listen to it. It's really, really, really good. It's just called "Blue."
If Michael Martin was here, play it on his guitar.
Michael Martin?
What? To play it on his guitar?
Yeah, he was.
Does he do that? He plays on his. Does he
I
have a
listened
guitar?
to him play some, or heard him play some Beck songs.
What?
Yeah.
Didn't know he was a musical man.
Joni Mitchell.
Blue.
Okay.
Blue. La 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 la. Yeah, it's great.
Cool.
It's an amazing song.
I'd play it, but I'm not. I'd prefer to hear Sherry sing.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I sang Blue. Okay, so after he falls into the sea of her eyes, he says, "Surely there is such a sea somewhere." And then she says, "In fairyland, Anoros." So in other words, because the sea that he thought that he was looking at was actually just a bog, right? And George MacDonald does this a lot in his stories. I mean, it'll happen many times, where the thing that is enchanted and seems grand and grandiose suddenly just becomes something very mundane, right?
Yeah.
And so he's like, surely there has to be a sea somewhere, right? Where is that great, grandiose thing that I could see it, you know? Yeah. And she said, it's in fairyland, you know? It's in the enchanted world.
How important do you think is the fact that fairyland is revealed in, or how significant is it that fairyland's revealed in glimpses? Like, if it had a lasting permanence, another way of asking this question, would that change its
well, I thought of saying something about that tendency when you were talking about repetition, because like she says to him, you believe nothing the first time, and it's foolish enough to let mere repetition convince you. Because I find that what happens with repetition is that people grow dull of hearing, right? Like, so this is like, who said this recently? Where was that? I was watching a video. I think it was Julian of Norwich said something that she wants to unfamiliarize the familiar. And that's how I feel about whenever I'm talking to people. I want to take something that's really familiar to them and make it unfamiliar, because repetition dulls you, right? And you stop seeing things and you stop hearing things, and you just, we've all had to sit through a lecture that our parents have given us, right? And the more they repeat themselves, the less we hear, right? And so I think that's what she's kind of hinting at there when she says, mere repetition won't convince you, right? If you think it's unbelievable, like, you have to believe it. And this is where it gets interesting with Jordan Peterson, because he says you act out what you believe, right? So believing is it's not a propositional thing. You don't believe something because you say it. You believe it because you act it out. And I think that you only believe something that deeply when you have seen it. Like me with the jackalope, right? I'm like ready to lay down my life for the jackalope.
I've seen it.
I'm like, I have seen one, And so now it was this guy's job to convince me that what I saw was not true. Right. Yeah. And that's why I think George MacDonald's worlds are so sensory, right? They're because it's experiential, right? It's through the experience of seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting that you come to believe. And that's what's that scripture? Taste and see that the Lord is good. That's how we believe. That's exactly what Thomas did, right? Doubting Thomas. Jesus is like, come on, go for it. Touch it. You need to, right? Yeah.
I'm still thinking about Sophia. And there's a way in which, like, that she's so ancient, like in the sense of she's always been there, and so it's like this thing, though, that at least my experience has been, it has been just glimpses. It's not like it's this, and I need it to be just glimpses in order for me to be continually allured
right
by Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so crazy because in some sense, like, she's more permanent and more concrete than anything. I don't know. It's just an interesting irony that I'm trying to put my finger on, but I don't know how.
You know, here's something to think about. I don't really know yet what I think about it, but it's been on my mind for a while. Novalis, for example, he was betrothed at a young age, like childhood age, to a girl named Sophie, actually. And I don't remember when exactly, but when they were like teenagers, close to getting married, she died, and they never did get married. And at that time, betrothal was marriage, right? Like there was to break off an engagement was like getting a divorce. Like it was, it was just it had the same weight, right? Dante had his Beatrice, right? And I don't remember what happened to her. She might have died. She must have died as well. And Kierkegaard also had a love that he sacrificed, right, for this higher calling, right, in his life. And there's something really, really powerful about that experience in these men's lives. I mean, look at what they accomplished because of it. Okay? Like seriously, because of it. I doubt Kierkegaard would have locked himself in a tower and written all those books if he had married the woman that he was supposed to marry, that he chose not to marry. And then, of course, he doubted his decision. And so what does he write about? The night of resignation and the night of, right? He's like, ah. Yeah. And where would we be without Beatrice? There would have been no Dante, right? And then Novalis's, Sophianic vision, because he lost Sophie. I don't know what to do with that. Like that's all I want to say about it, really.
Yeah.
But I've thought about it a lot. I
guess he's seeing her angel, right? Would you say something like that?
He's seen what?
Maybe he's seeing her angel.
Who,
Sophie's
Dante?
angel.
Or Novalis?
All of them, I guess.
You're
seeing their... It's their white lady, I guess, in a sense.
Well, what made me think of it was this idea that Luke was talking about glimpses, right? So they never actually consummated the relationship. And they had an imaginary relationship with these women. They could imagine what it would be like. They could look forward to it. They could, right? And then it was gone. And it was feminine and it was beautiful, right? And it represented all those things that the divine feminine seems to elicit, right? So this hiddenness, this veiledness, this glimpsing at things, all that kind of stuff, right? Like they literally had the experience of it in their own like material lives, like in their embodied life, right? They had that experience, a tangible one. And I don't know, Soloviev probably too. I haven't gotten, I don't know if he lost somebody, if he ever married. I don't really know that yet.
Wow.
There's definitely a large conversation to be had around Eros in regards to Sophia, and I don't know how to talk about it, but
totally.
And also the denial of that, like for these men, like you're saying too, like the way in which they were able to sacrifice that I don't know what otherwise would have been given to these women, and like converted that erotic desire into something, a different creative power or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
So you're saying that because because they were kind of deprived of their that life that they lost these women that they kind of always had this longing for them that kind of sparked a further longing, a further.
I
Is that what
don't
you mean?
actually
Yeah.
I don't actually have a conclusion. It's like they never
Mhm.
had it, right? They could never
Yeah.
grasp it. And that is the essence of the divine feminine, right?
Yeah.
That you don't get to grab it and hold it, right? That this is like that's why I said when Luke was talking about glimpses and stuff, I thought it reminded me of those
That's
thoughts,
probably why
right?
she says if you could touch me, I would hurt you.
That
Thing too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
part of it. Like you can't have me, right? You can't.
Mhm.
You can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
I think when I said I think they were seeing her angel, and I think what I was kind of getting at is because it's always the perfect. It's always in the heavens or something like that. It's always on. It's the most. I don't know. It's the thing you're always striving for. So it's always in the heavens, and then you get to it, and it's further there. Then you get to it, and it's further there, or something. And so it's even this white lady that's you're never able to grasp. It's like, and then you get close to her, then she's a little further away because, yeah, your greatest longing, your greatest communion, or something like that. I don't have the right words for it. I don't know.
To be fair,
Yeah.
I want to say that I think that this can occur in marriage too, though. Like, I think,
Oh, yeah,
like,
totally.
I know that
Yeah.
we're not saying like that it can't, but I
Mhm.
guess what I was trying to think of, like these, I wonder if like someone like Kierkegaard missed out on, I don't know.
I think
Well,
no, I
see,
think you're
I
right.
think
I think people lose sight of it is the problem, and maybe
Yeah.
it's that repetitious thing, like you're talking about, the
Mhm.
repetitions, and that it becomes, and so people forget to see each other as angels or something like that, and forget to. I
Yeah.
don't know.
well,
I
you
just
know, I'm kind of pragmatic about the whole thing because I think if these men got married, they wouldn't have had time to dedicate their lives to
That's true.
the pursuit, right, of
Yeah.
Sophia. And so, you know, they wouldn't have been so yeah, I just think that they would be caught up in everyday stuff, right? And providing for family and responsibilities and um and because of the situations that they found themselves in, they were able to dedicate that time to pursuing
Mm.
wisdom, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're right.
And something about never satiating that desire,
Right.
just
Because
continue to compel them.
it wasn't like that it was a car or a horse that they always wanted that they never got. It was the love of their lives,
Yeah.
okay?
Wow. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah. It's kind of like it reminds me a little bit of when Jacob Federici will say that. I'll say like if you're not married, you're only half a soul or something like that.
Mhm,
And it's kind
mhm,
of you're kind of missing that. Yeah, like you said, that other part of you, that love of your life that you're deprived of.
mhm.
Wow.
Jason, you have more soul than anyone I've ever met. So
you were frozen on my screen for a little bit. I don't know if you were frozen for Sherry too, but you were like this for like the longest time. Maybe you weren't on anybody else's, but you were like still talking. You were like, I was just like, I was trying not to laugh and just listen to you. Okay, Luke.
Oh, I hope that's real.
That's good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I'm gonna have to
here.
yeah, I'm gonna have to call it quits here pretty soon. But
I will be very sad if for some reason this doesn't work, but I assume this is all you gotta do. It says it's recording this whole time, so
I hope
I'll
it
get
will.
it.
Yeah.
I know, right? If not,
Otherwise, you know what?
I-
We could just
still
do it
got a
if you
lot.
guys don't mind. We could do it as a live stream on Grail Country.
we could do that next. Yeah, I mean, I'm down for whatever too. I know.
People could
I mean,
hop
there
in
was-
if they want to read along.
I'm just
Yeah.
gonna ignore the chat that I did that one
I
time.
usually I
Just
can't keep up with it as much too.
I'm excited to enter Fairyland.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
too.
It's where all the
We
juicy
just found the
tidbits
road.
are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. There's so much good stuff coming up. And we're gonna have to really pick and choose what we want to dig in on. Otherwise it's gonna be like so boring for people.
Yeah, we're gonna have to come with like 1 or 2 things each or something.
Yeah. I mean, the next chapter is only 1 page, and
Sure.
so I guess maybe we'll just go to chapter 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay. Cool.
All right. Well, you guys have a good night. Thanks for doing this.
Okay.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye, guys.